There's no one exact style to succeed in college basketball, and this year's Final Four shows that. We have a team that is deliberately slow and methodical like Virginia, and then two of the faster teams in the country in Auburn and Michigan State. The following is a graph of every player in the country. The horizontal axis on the graph is points scored in transition this season. The vertical axis is field goal percentage on those shots that were in transition. There aren't necessarily huge outliers, except if you zoom out a little bit to see one. That point all the way to the right is Ja Morant. And this graph does a pretty good job of highlighting some other potential NBA lottery picks. RJ Barrett was second in transition points behind Morant, while Zion Williamson and Brandon Clark were both two of the most efficient transition players in the country, given their transition volume. But this video isn't about any of those players. It's about Michigan State and Auburn. And both of those teams have outliers in transition, but for different reasons. First, we have Nick Ward. Michigan State's center scored 88 points in transition this year, shooting 89% on those baskets. He's pretty much far and away the most efficient transition scorer. This should be no surprise for anyone familiar with Tom Izzo's system. For years, Izzo and Roy Williams have probably been the coaches most well known for their secondary breaks. In both cases, the five-man's job is to sprint down the court for a rim run to the basket, even on makes. And that last part is a crucial point to a team that's committed to play fast. It's easy to run after live ball turnovers. You almost inherently have an advantage and incentive to push the ball on those plays. But a team like Michigan State pushes and rim runs even on makes. Ward is looking to beat his man down the floor for an easy basket. And even if his man stays with him, he'll then try to duck him into the deep post for a steal in early offense. The Michigan State guards look to feed the rim runner. Ward's a junior and has been in the Michigan State offense for 3 years, and it's no surprise that he's become disciplined running the floor, like nearly all of the Michigan State bigs before him. Some of those bigs have had the ability to either be the rim runner or the trailer, depending on the lineup and the situation, and Brandon Dawson was unique in that Michigan State could give him the ball a little earlier on his rim run, as opposed to someone like Nick Ward and let him put it on the floor once or twice. Matt Costello made a living off his discipline in running the floor hard. Here is the same exact graph from the opener, but with Michigan State and Auburn players specifically highlighted. You can already see Ward as an outlier, but what about Auburn? That orange dot to the right is Bryce Brown, Auburn's senior guard. You can see he's fairly close to the top players in the country in transition points, but there's a slightly different graph that really shows the uniqueness of Brown. The vertical axis is the same as before, but the horizontal axis has now been changed to just transition points that came off of only 3-pointers. And with that change, now you can see that Bryce Brown is almost as far ahead of the pack as Ja Morant was. Brown has scored 132 points off transition threes this season. The next highest is just 108, Houston's Corey Davis. Auburn's coach, Bruce Pearl, has consistently played fast over the course of his career and given his players freedom in that regard. That stance didn't change at all for their Sweet 16 matchup against also historically fast North Carolina.
I would just say take the over. That's all I would say, because, I mean, Roy's not going to slow down. We're not going to slow down. You know, the way to beat Carolina always be, don't let them kill you on the boards and make it a half-court game, and don't let them get you in transition. And I think the bottom line for us is we play best going fast also.
Brown had his most impactful transition shooting game of the tournament against Kansas, hitting 3 threes in transition. But it was an SEC game against Tennessee which best shows Auburn's preferences on a fast break, much to the shock of Dick Vitale.
The bench, and they are just turning it over and over and over.
And a layup, and then wide open.
Instead, they take a three and make that one. Do it himself. He got smothered by Wiley. Run for Harper. They love the three.
In general, the coaching world has embraced the transition three much more than 10 years ago, but Auburn's willingness to hunt those threes even after a make early in the shot clock is especially fun to watch. Tom Izzo and Michigan State are a little more traditional in how their fast break functions. We saw that the rim runner is a huge priority, but that's not to say they haven't adjusted at all to the times. Senior guard Matt McQuaid isn't quite on Brown's level, but he has freedom to let it fly early in the shot clock. It was his transition dunk that became a highlight against Duke, but McQuaid is usually more likely to run for threes, even if there is sometimes a little bit more hesitation than Auburn's attack. Statistically, the 2 point guards for Michigan State and Auburn are extremely similar. Both Cassius Winston and Jared Harper have hit 20 transition threes this season. But as point guards, they also do plenty of work off the bounce in transition. Jared Harper is lightning fast with the ball and has given opponents trouble throughout the tournament with straight line drives to the hoop early in transition. He also for sure has the freedom to pull up from three, and he'll do it sometimes from NBA range, but he actually hasn't got one to fall in the tournament thus far. Cassius Winston isn't quite as fast as Harper in the open floor, but that doesn't mean he's any less effective. Winston is more of a prober and an extremely crafty finisher. It would be a little bit more surprising to see him pull up from 4 steps beyond the arc like Harper might, but he will pull up, and he's shooting over 40% from 3 on the season. Harper is at 37%. So to wrap up, now we have a team summary where the horizontal axis is points in transition and the vertical is points off threes in transition. There are teams that do more in transition in general, but nobody in the country did more this season than Auburn with transition threes. And as expected, Michigan State isn't too far behind. On the other end of the spectrum, you can see how deliberately slow Virginia is. But don't mistake that for inefficiency. The Virginia offense has been as efficient really as ever this season, and Tony Bennett has stuck to his normal pace. Texas Tech's transition would probably best be described as simply opportunistic. They aren't as deliberate as Virginia, but you also probably won't see them hunting for threes or rim runs after an opponent make. If you're interested in the style of play of those other two Final Four teams, please check out my videos from earlier in the season on Texas Tech's no-middle defense and Virginia's blocker mover offense.